Do you show your daughter the one that's smoking a blunt?
Yeah, 100%. So my PFP smokes, and I got like a 4 foot by 4 foot acrylic print in my living room, and it's in the house, it's on the wall,
I guess nothing's forbidden, and then
in the
people aren't
Cohen
scared of
house.
anything.
No, but she's got her favorite. She likes the rainbow grill, the rainbow teeth trait. That's like when she like points at my computer, like that's what she wants to see.
Hi everyone, it's Sam, NFT Statistics, and today we have Ben Cohen, the founder of Killabears, on the podcast. Now, we've generally focused more on one-of-one artists on this show, but I thought it'd be interesting to bring someone from the PFP world to talk to. Now, PFPs have been through a rough road. The transition to zero royalty, the movement of most of the volume to Blur have both largely commoditized the work and made it difficult, especially for the middle tier projects to survive. Through all these trials, though, whenever I look at my screens, the price of Killabears always seems to be going up. Gone from below 1 ETH 6 months ago to now in that 3 to 4 range where it seems to stay. They also have a complex ecosystem with many NFTs. They did an open edition and a whole lot more. And through it all, the project has done well with some of the most loyal holders. I wanted to get a sense of what has allowed this project to do so well in this challenging environment. Killabears was a free mint. Royalties have largely washed away, yet the team continues to thrive, continues to succeed, and continues to build for the future. Part of it has always been building with a bigger picture in mind for what the brand and what the IP can become, with a 3 to 5 year time horizon in the mind of the founders. Ben walks through a lot of this in this video. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hi, everybody. I am here with Ben Cohen. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So, I'm really glad to have you on the show today because I think we're in a moment right now where people are really questioning the viability of PFP projects and just kind of like the long-term outlook for PFP NFTs in particular. And I think I've seen you say a lot how this is the perfect place for you. This is where you want to be devoting your career, and you're doing it to a PFP project. So, what do you think is the bull case here? What do you think is the long-term story for the space in general?
I would say that everybody that's questioning PFP is correct to be questioning it. I think what we're seeing now is we're pretty deep into the bear market, and I think finally we're at this place where a lot of the stuff that happened in the bull market and where it was always destined to go because the teams didn't have the right intentions and they didn't do all the right things. A lot of those projects and like the reality is I'm saying project because I feel that that's what this is kind of the fate of a project is if it's not a business or there's not a deeper vision. But I think it's just there has to be a big rinsing of PFP projects that didn't have a huge reason to exist other than, NFTs were hot, there was a bull market and founders thought that they could do it. I'm obviously hugely bullish on this space. I think that Web3 is like, I feel like we're talking like, 1996, 1997 internet, before the bubble happened. Not talking about the burst, but the bubble. I think we're just so early, and I think that this technology that we have can take us to incredible places if people understand the value of intellectual property and they have the skills, the team, the resources, the vision to do something with it. For us, we're an entertainment company. In the way that I look at it is if you look at like Angry Birds, what Angry Birds did was launch an intellectual property, like a media franchise, but instead of launching the traditional way where like a Nickelodeon would go to a room of writers and say, can you guys come up with some characters and we're trying to make our next big show. That's a traditional thing. And that takes like years to do the distance they have to travel between creating Dora and then Diego and then creating Dora the Explorer and having a pilot, a season, consumer product, the goods. And then all of a sudden, 20 years later, they finally had a movie. That's actually how long it took for Dora. Angry Birds launched as an iPad game in the early App Store. And then, those birds, you can find them in Target now on dog toys, backpacks, water bottles, Netflix. You could find the series. They had a feature film. And I think that for us, we see PFP as similar to Angry Birds launching as an iPad game. It's just a place to start. And then what are you going to do with it? How are you going to grow from there? So if you look just at PFPs, yeah, I think that there's like a real fracture going on. And I think it's probably healthy. But the teams and the collections that have a vision that's much greater, I think PFP is a fantastic way to start.
Yeah. So Killabears, it's fun art. It kind of has a useful energy mixed with kind of serial killer. It's kind of got this complex vibe. You're not sure what you're getting, cute or kind of scary. But why don't you give us a little bit of the history of Killabears? Like, how did this project come together? What do you think makes it unique?
For sure. So I would say there's two pieces that converged. So one is our background as a team. There's 4 partners in our company here. 3 of us have worked together since 2016 with a mobile video game company. Our company was called Umbrella Games, and the catalog is still active. We obviously put the catalog under our new company here that's Web3 focused. We've worked together for a long time, and we've had a lot of success. And we really respected Web3, and we kind of came into it wanting to learn and wanting to find a way to push the boundaries and use the skills that we had. And then Mimo, our artist, our illustrator, had been, for a decade, he had been doing stock art. So drawing illustrations for like iStock, Shutterstock, etc. And he had found that these bears, not these specific ones that you're looking at, but bears in his, visual style sold better than other creatures that he was drawing. And he spent a decade perfecting his craft. And obviously, as a stock artist, you only make as much money as you sell through these sites. So things like the gummy that you're looking at, like that's a trait that he developed in his time as a stock artist. Now, what happened was when Mikkel, our creative director, and Mimo started talking about, bringing Mimo on board, we obviously had to change Mimo's style to fit into a generative collection, because what he was doing was not, they couldn't have been NFTs. And, I think like they spent about 6 months kind of with this like coach relationship with Mikkel coaching Mimo into how to adjust and adapt his art. And ultimately here we are, you're looking at it, a lot of different cool trait groups, and, no one had done bears. People seem to like the bears.
What's your thought on the motion? There aren't that many PFPs that like where their natural state is to be in motion.
Yeah, I mean, I think animated is cool. I think when you're scrolling through a feed, and there's most things don't have any movement. These have movement. I think it's great. Mikkel, creative director, did all of that. Obviously, with the game background, there's a lot of animation in games, so he's got that skill. And what's cool about the animation on these, I think, is that a lot of people think it's the same like walk cycle where you're seeing it kind of like above the belt. But if you look at like a zombie trait, the zombie has a fur, the arms, they move differently. Yeah, like a green zombie. It's like, and like there's little nuances and like that attention to details. It's all Mikkel and Mimo, thinking through like the little intricacies of all of this.
When you think of who do you think of as the target market for this art? Like it feels like there's a very specific demographic that kind of feels drawn to this, and I'm curious if that's true and who that is.
I don't know. I try not to make too many assumptions. We're not going after like a young kids market. I think we're going a little older. But like then again, I have 3 kids, and even my 2-year-old, like, comes to talk to me about Killabears in her 2-year-old kind of language. But it's definitely older. I think you're looking more at like a Family Guy sort of demo. TED demo.
Do you show your daughter the one that's smoking a blunt?
Yeah, 100%. So my PFP smokes, and I got like a 4 foot by 4 foot acrylic print in my living room, and it's in the house. It's on the wall.
I guess nothing's forbidden, and then
in the Cohen house.
I think.
No,
fair enough.
But she's got her favorites. She likes the the rainbow grill, the rainbow teeth trait. That's like when she like points at my computer, like that's what she wants to see.
Yeah, that's a cool trait. I think the apes made that big. Did you guys try to model your traits after other, Rainbow Grill, if I'm thinking of the same one, is like it is a Bored Ape trait? Like, what was the goal, to do a bunch of head nods to some of the kind of legendary traits?
I wasn't personally too involved in the creative side of things. I think that probably the thing is you have to make so many different traits to make a collection happen. I don't think that we spent much time looking at apes, punks, the titans before us, but I imagine that you can't really make a PFP collection without borrowing some ideas from the others. But yeah, I was not involved in all that.
Yeah, I think that borrowing process actually it strengthens a collection. Like, if there are people out there who just love 3D glasses, and you at least want to give them a reason to look at your collection. You kind of give that head nod to the space in general.
For sure. I'm with you on that. There's people that's like their thing. Like, they only buy Rainbow Grill, or they only buy pink, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I think is interesting about your project in particular is that it's held up really, really well. We've been in this process where I feel like so many NFTs have either gone, the 3 ETH NFTs are now worth less than 1 ETH. The 15 ETH NFTs are now worth 5 ETH, but I feel like Killabears, is up over the past 6 months, and obviously it's come down a little bit. But what do you think it is about the project that has allowed it to perform pretty well?
I think we have focused a lot on entertainment. I think we always kind of hammer it into our holders' heads. Like, we're an entertainment company. Our job is to entertain you guys, make this fun, and our focus is on driving value back to you with entertainment, with fun, with value, and protecting the ETH that you've invested and growing it. But I think we have done a good job as far as like ecosystem design, which is not too dissimilar from how mobile video games work, where you've got to think about kind of the full picture on how the supply, the economics of them, how they all interrelate. It actually reminds me a lot of how we have to deal with video games, with retention curves, rewarding gameplay, but not too much, making it hard, making it engaging. So I think that we've also shown a pretty grand vision, and I just think our holders are having fun, and they've stuck by us. We've delivered a lot of value back to them outside of just the core collection, the Killabear OGs, and I think they've appreciated it. They've been loud, proud, diamond-handed, and have brought in their friends, and I think everybody kind of expects that we're going to grow a lot more. So, people are sticking with us.
One of the things I'm always curious about is I feel like there's this tension between keeping things interesting and exciting for your collectors, but you also need it to be simple enough that someone like me will want to buy. And when I say someone like me, I mean someone who I don't want to learn about an entire ecosystem. I don't want to feel like if I miss a Discord message, I might not get the free money you're dropping. How do you see that balance in terms of catering to your current users and giving them the entertainment, but also creating an environment where new people feel like they want to be part of what you're doing, and that there's not a big barrier to entry?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky balance. I think it's always up to the holder. So there's people that they're so deeply involved and interested in the Killabears that they don't miss an announcement. They play the game, and this whole thing is kind of a little bit of a game, the act of collecting in our ecosystem. They know every detail about everything, and they're maximizing, and they're repositioning constantly. And for them, it's really fun. It's a strategy game that's as involved as they want it to be. And then there's people that just want to buy a couple bears and have exposure to the ecosystem and take a 10-year bet. Either way, we're cool with it. I think we're pretty focused on just meeting holders where they are. And I think for everybody, for someone that's really actively involved, they want, we've given them a lot to chew on. For someone that just wants to be passive, see a video here or there, and buy what they like, I think it's also a good environment for them. But Web3 is tricky. I mean, holders have demands. They want to be entertained. They want information. They want communication. They want value back. They want to feel like their bag is growing. They want to see that this 10-year vision is being worked on now, but also they want like a 3-day vision. These are like not easy things at all do work together. I think we've done about as well as you can with it, but it's a tricky population to satisfy, that's for sure.
What is that 10-year vision? What's the 10-year vision for holding one of these?
I think it's a lot like how Angry Birds has developed. I think you'll see us film, television, consumer product. Mikhail always says, our creative director, until we have a whole aisle in Target with product that's branded Killabears, we won't stop. So, and a lot of that is how can you drive value back to the holder, with licensing, and there's different creative ways that we've already started working on things like that. We were a free mint, so we were given a huge opportunity, in last April when we wouldn't have minted out paid if we wanted. So our whole thing is like, what can we do to support and show love back to the community that gave us a chance here? And as we grow into that 10-year vision, we want to make sure that the holder feels that they're one part of it, but also entertained by it, on like the biggest scale possible.
When you say we want to be like Angry Birds, like, I don't know enough about Angry Birds to know what that even means. What are the things Angry Birds has that you think Killabears is going to have over the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what are the concrete deliverables that you think people can expect?
We'll have a movie. We'll have an animated television series. We'll be online. We were already doing some e-commerce, but we'll be online, probably retail as well. And we're a game company. We're actually like one of the only real game companies that's in this space. Was game focused prior. So all these things will be out there for sure.
Why don't we dive a little bit into your past? I know that you mentioned you've had some history in the video game space. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you were doing before you kind of stumbled into Web3 and made this into your career?
For sure. I think I've had a pretty fun journey in the internet industry. I think I was lucky that I didn't have any success in the corporate world when I was 21, 22. At 23, I finally kind of bit the bullet. It was like, I'm done with these big companies. I'm going to go work in the New York startup scene. And I got a job at a small mobile app studio doing business development. Long story short, I ultimately had some success there and then moved and opened my own app studio. And, I sold that company when I was 26. And that was when I started making my own apps. And I ultimately wanted to kind of be vertically integrated. So I started marketing my apps on Instagram meme pages. So I made an app called Whentogram, like when to post on Instagram. And that was supposed to be the first of many of these types of apps. And distribution is kind of the tricky thing with apps and games, on the App Store. And ultimately, I had found that worked really well. And I started buying up a lot of these Instagram pages from these influencers and getting a ton of installs. And this is when the video game thing happened. My friend Mikhail, who's my partner now, was like, let's do something because we have really good games, but we need more players. So we made a deal and I, joined as a partner there. And at the same time, I was rebranding a lot of these pages I was buying to mimic how like a traditional publishing house would work. Like a Hearst or a Condé Nast, they've got, the 17 magazine or the Cosmo, they've got Bon Appetit or Delish or the food property. So I was basically mimicking these Instagram properties around a media company like that. And at the same time, promoting apps and video games on those. And ultimately I sold that business was called Scopus Media. We had about 17 million subscribers on the Instagram portfolio at the end of the thing. And then, I focused all on video games with Mikhail and Bean, with Umbrella Games. And there's been some SaaS, there's been some e-com. And I've kind of touched most of the corners of the internet world by now. I'm 35 now, so it's been, 12 and a half years. But Web3, I didn't really want to do it. Truthfully, the story is my relationship with crypto hasn't been great. When I was 26, I bought a bunch of Bitcoin. This was 2013, excuse me. And that was right before the Mt. Gox hack. And I was lucky to not be, I was lucky to be in Coinbase at the time, but yeah, I exited, with paper hands about a year later, and I didn't really make anything at all. And obviously Bitcoin that was like $600 per. So I got to enjoy watching in the news Bitcoin literally moon in front of me when I had like a ton of Bitcoin. And then I was a little late with Top Shot. I got into that. I had, one that went well, and then I kind of aped in pretty heavily, and I was like the top six. And then they approached me. They were like, I think we should just pivot. I think we should just focus here on doing Killabears. And at this point, I think I was mature and old enough to know that I wasn't a good trader. I wasn't a good trader with stocks. I certainly wasn't with crypto. I wasn't with Top Shot either. But as an operator, I had a lot of success. So I went for it.
Cool. And having had your experience in gaming in here, what do you think are like the key differences to think about between like a gaming audience and Web3 or NFTs?
There's one critical, huge difference. It's in games, we call them players or we call them users. And the reason is they're generally anonymous. We don't know who they are. We don't even know who they are on social media, but you review who they are by the numbers. You're looking at all the analytics, and that's how you judge them as players and judge your game as well. NFT, the feedback loop is immediate because everybody's on Twitter or Discord, and you make one announcement within 30 seconds, the reception of it. Whereas in a game, you might need to get statistical relevance on something you're curious about. You might need 10,000 users, and you might have to wait some time for them to get to level X to find out if the game is well balanced and the difficulty is right. And in NFT, in our ecosystem, we know immediately. So that feedback loop is what makes it so interesting. In good and bad ways. Your the community is literally right there.
Yeah. Do you think that is the marketing chat? How is marketing different in one versus? I mean, one thing I'll often think about with NFTs is it's very hard to market. You could. Who are you going after? And at the end of the day, it feels like there's a lot of just relying on your community to do your marketing for you. But
right,
how have you seen those marketing channels different?
The marketing channel is really different. I mean, for games, where we marketed, we did some social media marketing with my pages and some influencers out there. We did a lot of paid marketing through ad networks and social media. You buy Facebook ads and Instagram ads, and you do that whole ROAS thing. And you rely a lot on the platform, and is Apple or Google going to give you a front page feature, that kind of thing. And obviously network effect, can you get players to invite people in? They can earn more rewards. In NFT, and by the way, the gaming market is massive. I don't know how many people play games on a daily basis, but the daily actives on App Store and even console games is a huge number. Web3, I don't even know if we have 1 million daily active. I actually think we're probably in the 50,000 daily active users on an OpenSea or Blur. It's probably less actually. But as far as how we market, we have to be realistic. We have a really small community of people that are receptive to NFTs. Most people, they don't want to hear about it. So they don't even know what it is. So most of the marketing is definitely community focused. What I would say is important is that the founding team arms the community with a lot of good content to promote out there. I think that's been one of the keys to our success is, that we've given them a lot to talk about on Twitter and Discord. But I mean, it's still such early days in NFT. I think, as we get more wide adoption, I think the marketing will get more mainstream to how, we market in e-commerce and SaaS for sure.
What do you think are the keys right now? I think there's a bit of a tension in the NFT space between I've heard Frank from D Gods talk about how the way to grow the space is to make your holders as happy and as proud and as much of an evangelist as possible. And then I think kind of you also have projects like Doodles, which are talking about how they want to grow and be, a mainstream brand like Disney and kind of more in that space and just get widespread popularity that way. Like, what's your take on? I almost think we have a problem, and like in the sense that unique buyers of NFTs has gone down for 6 months. It is really hard to get people on board. And what's your take, kind of being on the inside of a project as you are?
I think they're both right. I think Frank is right in that you need your kind of core supporters to really be pumped and tell the world about you. I do think that that's important, and I think he's done a great job of that. He's a brilliant marketer. And I think Doodles is right too. I think that Doodles' approach to moving to Flow and will it work? I don't know. But they're trying to go after a much larger audience where, Flow is much easier to deal with. You don't have MetaMask. You don't have a lot of these issues. You're just using a credit or debit card. And I understand the point of view that they're trying to just get more people into the ecosystem. I think everybody's right. I think ultimately there's probably only going to be a handful that start as PFPs that are going to be able to make that successful jump into the, call it, will they exist 3 years from now in a big way or 5 years from now? I think there's not room for a ton of us, but if the intellectual property is good enough and the strategy to kind of bridge the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 makes sense, I think you can have a Disney for sure. There could be a few. I think that we always say that, like, we have our vision. The next Marvel universe will not be created by a legacy media company. I think it'll be created by somebody in this space. Somebody's got to do it, though. Somebody has to do it. It's going to be hard, but like somebody will do it.
And what else have you learned? Like, what have been kind of the big lessons having been doing what you're doing for a year now? Things you would teach yourself a year ago, mistakes you've made. Well, what does that conversation with your year ago self look like as far as what to do differently and what to kind of double down on?
I hadn't thought much about it. I mean, the thing is, the whole thing moves so fast, and we've had the good fortune of kind of growing at a pretty healthy rate that we haven't stopped to think about kind of postmortem sort of thoughts, like what could we change? I think we figured out the storytelling and lore and how we deliver and disseminate information and communications. That took about in the summer. I wish we had figured that out a little bit earlier, but we really couldn't have. We needed to like experiment and find our voice and our style a little bit. But I think that the economics need to be considered more heavily by basically everybody, because that's where I see most collections running into trouble. And I've had to eat like my own humble pie and know that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and turn to people in our community or people that I think that know something that I don't, and ask for help and say, like, we were thinking about doing this. What do you think about it? And being really open, especially with the community. There's a few community members that have some really specialized experience, and they obviously are rooting for the Killabears to win. Like they're bag holders. So to go to them and say, like, hey, like, here's kind of a rough draft of what I was thinking of doing. Do you have any thoughts? And to make sure that did we miss something? Did we have a blind spot or not? I wish that more would do that. And we do it for like pretty much everything that we do. We make sure that that everybody kind of agrees that it's going to work out. And it's been good. But I think one day I'll go on vacation, take a couple of days off Twitter and Discord, and I'll think about, how did this year go and what could we have changed and done better? But we're really, really in tune with the community and trying to do the right thing every day.
And how do you deal with kind of that community interaction piece? I feel like there are a couple, I think we've seen instances of founders getting kind of into confrontational situations with their communities. Maybe the fact that your price has stayed pretty strong and you haven't had those downturns has made it easier for you to not have to cross that bridge, but I'm sure that it hasn't all been super smooth. What's your personal approach to Twitter, to interacting with your community, to interacting in Discord, keeping things mysterious while getting the feedback,
right?
All those types of questions.
The way I deal with it is to deal with it head on and be very available and accessible. obviously that is not always easy. Like it's pretty overwhelming that some people have my phone number and if you answer somebody once in a DM, you've basically invited them to DM you again. So I get overloaded with communication. It's pretty hard to keep up with it. But I think that accessibility has given people a lot of confidence. Training holders to be patient and is our job. Like how do you get holders to stay relaxed and not want to sell and not want to exit? If you show them a really big vision in the future and how they can be along for the ride, and you do enough to entertain them and drive value back to them in the short term, you kind of have what Killabears has been, a pretty steady climb. And but it's founders need to be a few things. They need to be doxed. They need to be communicating. They don't need to be like me, where they're in DM every single day, Discord every single day, like a friend to the community. It's been fun, but it's overwhelming at times. But they need to be kind of regularly making themselves heard. And they've got to show holders respect on a couple of things. One is, thank you for spending your time in our community and kind of spreading the word and onboarding people and doing whatever they do. And respect the ETH that they've put into the collection. At least try your best to preserve it or grow it. All you have to do is just try. Everybody knows that this is a risky thing, and but I think that you can't take that responsibility lightly. People's time and people's ETH. You got to try your best, and communication goes a long, long way.
Yeah, I think that is it's just something that always hurts to see. It's like people not realizing that people are putting their family's savings and their hard-earned money into these collections. And I think the way you describe that, like, just respect that this is something that people care a lot about. And, it's both tied to their identity, but it's also tied to their financial well-being, and kind of realizing that that's not something to take lightly. Obviously, it's risky and you can't control the future, but sometimes I always find it disappointing when there's a confrontational relationship between projects and founders, because it really it could have projects and holders, because the holders, the community, has a lot riding on it.
Yeah, I think like a lot of times, and I can't get away from these things. Live on the internet, I go on Twitter, and if there's a confrontation, and there's been several lately, like I see the transcript, and in my mind I'm saying like, all they had to do was like get off their phone or computer and take a walk around like the block and like take a deep breath, and they would have avoided like a whole thing. And this happened. This is not like only like the last like few weeks. Like this is since I've been on here for a year. The holders, you got to respect. You got to respect them. We all work together, kind of a thing, and we all feel we're on the same team and we're all rowing in the same direction. We can go amazing places. But if you don't have that feeling in a community where there's like a real like fracture between the team and the community, I think you're asking for it. It could be ugly.
Yeah. I mean, you guys did the free mint, presumably, the way that ultimately you make revenues to royalties. And obviously we're in an environment where royalties are basically kind of half of 1%. That's basically where we've gone. I haven't looked at Killabears royalties yet, but I imagine it's somewhere between half of 1% and 1% if it's kind of followed where most of the market is. How have you adjusted to that? What's how does that change your vision for your own future?
It doesn't change at all. We've got a video game company that's still operating. One of the reasons why we could do a free mint and not have a fat treasury to operate was we already had income from games that we've made, years ago. So we already were a business. And
so you mean royalty revenue that just continues to come in from games or download and install?
It's not
in game.
Right. It's not royalties. It's in-app purchase and ad network revenues. Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's been pretty good. And we obviously did earn a lot of royalties until kind of this Blur thing went down. And we had an open edition, which was pretty killer, and we're focusing on a lot of Web 2 businesses that are that are totally part of what we're doing here, and so it doesn't really affect us at all. I think ultimately these marketplaces, something will have to shake out here. I do think royalties are important. I don't know if this whole thing has been bad. I think it might be actually very good for the space. But I think, the thing with royalties, I always like when people ask about it, philosophically, feeling is a market without marketplaces is inefficient and clunky. So if we didn't have OpenSea, we didn't have Blur, you could still transact, right? Like CryptoPunks, for example. Like you can still, they don't, you don't buy them on those, but you can still buy them. A marketplace without creators doesn't exist. So I think you have this odd situation where if you don't respect the creators, you got nothing. So we have to find a happy medium, and I'm sure we will one day.
When you say you think it's nice to hear you say you think this could be a good thing, and I'd love, from a creator perspective, I'd love to hear like what that looks like. What's the optimistic case here?
I mean, I've seen so the way I operate is I talk to a lot of the holders. So there's a lot of holders that come to us where like they're done with NFTs. They're like, this is my last one. Like I heard it was great. I heard it was different. I've had like 7 rugs. Like I have lost a fortune. Like this is my last one. If this doesn't work out, I'm out of here. And as you get to know these people and you start to hear secondhand about a lot of the projects that they were in, some of these founders made a ton of money on royalties, and they had awful intentions. They never tried. And we can't really reward that. Like, that's not right. Like, that is not fair. And a lot of people have lost a ton to people that have made millions with awful intentions. So I think on one side, like, do we deserve the royalties that we get? Yes. Like, we're working nonstop. We have great intentions. We've done so much for the community in terms of giving things back, but then there's other teams that have not, and it's hard to justify them collecting a royalty. And I think this whole situation that's going on is rinsing out a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is a side that doesn't often, and I don't even think it's always bad intentions. It's just sometimes the economic balance has felt off in the past. There's been something like $2 billion of royalties paid just in the past 2 years to creators. I mean, it's an absolutely massive number, and that's just on the big exchanges, not including like art sales and whatnot. So,
right,
and in a lot of cases, those NFTs went to nothing. And I do think I think some of that frustration that holders had was justified. Like, it probably is not the ideal scenario that if you buy an NFT for 5 ETH and sell it for 0.3 ETH, that was the agreement when you bought the 5 ETH NFT. Like, that was part of the deal. So it's not, nothing in part of the risk. But I agree with you that the way things have been in the past probably wasn't optimal. It was kind of where we landed, and maybe now we'll see a chance to rethink a bit of that and figure out where we belong. One last thing I kind of want to get your thoughts on is the open edition. You were one of the very first projects to do an open edition. It was something that a lot of artists were doing, and I think the floor price is still up above where you launched it at. What was the key to success there? What was the thinking there that made that something you wanted to do, and then something that worked out so well?
So it was the most fun experience. Basically, I was buying on Manifold some open editions because I could see that it was like it was a meta. And we have this issue with Killabears. It's that the floor price is kind of high. So, and we have a small collection. So it's not easy. Like, there's a lot of people that are Killabear curious, but they're totally priced out. So we said, all right, well, let's try to get a few things in order. And if we can thread this needle, it'll be fantastic. So one, we would be the first NFT collection to do an open edition. We're not going to do it on Manifold. We're going to do it on our own mint site, and we're going to have full control, and we're going to make it like a fully Killabear experience. Entertainment, like storytelling, like all that stuff. And we're going to make it priced really well so all of Web3 can enjoy it. And we're going to celebrate, our artist Memo. But the final thing was, and the reason why I think the floors have gone up, is we're going to make this like a junior and a light version of the Killabear ecosystem, so that people that are Killabear curious but don't want to spend whatever, 3 ETH or whatever, can get a taste for what we do, and that's immersive and interactive experiences through storytelling. And, if you go onto like the Burn site to burn, 64 volume 1s to get 32 volume 2s, you'll say like, damn, this is nice. This site is smooth as glass. The animation was great. So we thought like all of those different pieces together, if we could marry them all into one, it would be a really fun experience. And it's certainly, like those gold ones you're seeing on the side, those were surprises. No one knew that those were going to come. Those, if you filled out a full burn card, you get these gold ones for free.
There's the volume 69.
Yeah. 420.
Yeah.
For the culture as everything. So, yeah, I mean, open edition, the meta didn't last long. We knew we had to move quickly. From the day that we decided to do it to launch was 6 days.
One thing I always feel when I see these open editions, and I'm trying to wrestle with this in my head, so I'd love to get your take, is I feel like and this is, I have not dug super deep into Killabears open edition, but I feel like they create this gamification that gives people dopamine hits and gives people excitement over the near term. It's like, if I take 2 blue ones, maybe I'll get a red one, and if I take 2 red ones, ultimately I'll get a green one. And there's kind of this process where people want to be part of that game, but then eventually the price points for these just end up way too high, and you can't keep that gamification and that excitement going on forever. Attention focuses elsewhere. And it just feels like a lot of times, like, they're fun while they last, but I wonder how these can be decent investments over the long term. And I'm curious your take on that. Like, is that even the point? Like, is the point just to enjoy the ride while you're at it, and then these aren't great long-term investments? Or do you think these actually are decent long-term investments?
Yeah. So a lot, the problem is there's most of the open editions that exist are from artists that don't have like an ecosystem to connect these open editions to. So they live alone on this island, and once the hype ends, it's just kind of game over and everyone's got to go home. We have an actual ecosystem to connect this to. So we have this thing called the Burn Market, which is going to be focused on our Killa Cub collection, which isn't out yet. The mint is in just about a month. But these cubs that people are going to get are nude, or like they're going to be kind of progenerated, but the traits that go on them are going to be up to the user. So one thing that people do know is that we're going to have, in this burn market that we're going to have, the open editions can be burned, and there's a currency, all of that, the volume 1s are worth X, volume 2 are worth a little bit more, it's 1 point, 3 point, and then volume 3 is 8 points. Those are going to be redeemed for traits. People can, so that's kind of the point, is that this, and then obviously the supply here went from 50,000 to 19,000. It's open edition. So the supply will go down and down and down.
So the burning has worked to...
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so the burning has been effective.
It's been, but we, the thing is before we put this out, we like went through every scenario, similar to how we do in our core ecosystem, and said, if this happens, what happens here? And then, we did all of the mental gymnastics to figure out the math around it. And the burn market is how we connect this to the core ecosystem. So, one of the big motivations was, we haven't gotten like a lot of like influencer love in NFT for whatever reason. But we felt like we didn't need it, because if we did a really good job with the open edition, we could kind of make this like a farm system, like, minor league, you have people that enter through the open editions. They like what they see. They like the team. They like all of what we do. And they buy Killabears. They buy Killabears. It's happened quite a lot, like almost every day since the mint. So it's another way to onboard people into the core ecosystem as well.
Yeah. So a couple of last things just to close with. What, I think the vision of building a big entertainment company is very interesting. And I think, and I think there's kind of this leap of faith that we make, that ultimately, if a brand is big, it will accrue value to the original NFT holders. It's like you build this brand, and then suddenly the original NFTs are now worth $5,000, they're worth $10,000, or they've doubled in price, or they go up over time. How much confidence do you have in that? What do you think is the mechanism ultimately that makes those original NFTs worth a lot over time, even if you're successful building a brand?
I think that's definitely the thesis, and I imagine it to be true. Because, the more exposure you're able to get for a brand, suppose you're, a household name, if people dig into the intellectual property, they want to learn more. And ultimately they figure out, oh my God, this launched as an NFT. And they go through their research and they find out that there's only X many of them, and they want to get one. That at scale will push prices up. But you've got to get there. Got to get to the point where you have global awareness and people and you've done a good enough job to get people to be curious about how this all started. I always think like Family Guy, which is something I watched a lot. Suppose times were different and that show came out next year and it was based on, a bull market NFT mint, right? So you have Family Guy and like, imagine you minted have bought Stewie, right? And the project team had this vision to make this inappropriate TV show for teenagers and up. And they go to you and say, one, like you'll get the licensing deal, but that's going to change your life for sure. And people will be like, I could own Stewie, right? Like we have with NFT, we have the chance. Like, this IP is going to be out there. Some teams are going to do more with it than others, but I think that journey is interesting for people.
So do you think it's a cash flow story? Like you own the IP in a certain way, or do you think it's more kind of where we've been, which is just this like branding, like I own this collectible that the team has made originally unique on the blockchain and no one else can own it? Which of those mechanisms do you think really kind of is the driver?
You need to do both. You need to lavish your community with licensing deals for sure, and bring them along for the ride, because like they own the actual IP. We have the brand, right? The Killabear brand and the storyline and all that, but the bears are theirs. So I think you need to find unique ways to not single out like 3 or 4 people, and you need to find a way to get in wholesale, like trait groups, licensing deals. And, but at the same time, it's our responsibility to make the brand really big. And so you need to do both, is what I'm saying.
It does seem hard. Like I can't think of any shows with 3,000 characters, right? You got 3,000.
No, definitely not. But like, think about this. Okay, so everybody knows we're working on a movie, with Seth Green, common knowledge in the space. Suppose there's 10 characters in the show that are Killabears. Sorry, in the film. Suppose you've got the cheetah fur, the 3D glasses. You get where I'm going, right? Uh-huh. So instead of singling out like you and your single bear, how can we maybe think about the trait group, like the dominant trait of this character? Suppose there's 65 people in our 65 holders with the cheetah fur trait. What if the royalties from a film go to one wallet, like that designated to like the cheetah, like their piece of the pie, and then those 65 people decide what to do with those funds, versus like you and your single one being lavished with a monster deal. I think that's kind of interesting thing to think about, because with licensing in NFT so far, there's just winners and losers. And like we've experienced it because we've done, 4 license deals already, and there was 4 winners and there was like 2,000 losers.
So 4 winners, you mean 4 NFTs that got access to those cash flows?
Yeah. Yeah.
And did they, how much money actually was returned to the NFT holders?
Oh, and we haven't launched the thing yet. We're doing Toys. And we had the community vote on, the community voted on which IP was going to be the ones to get made in the first run. And no, but they're going to make significant ETH. It's going to be quite a lot
for those 4. And
yeah,
those toys just going to be like toys that I can buy at Toys R Us, or what's going to be the distribution channel?
No, they're going to be really limited, very collectible. I wish I have them upstairs in the house, some prototypes, but if you go to Killabears.com, there's a section that'll show you, might be interesting to look at now, but no, I mean, it'll be a mint, and there's a lot of surprises within the mint, and then ultimately at the end, you'll take delivery, to your home for one of these. It's a very digital experience.
Okay, got it. Cool. And you say more about the movie. Sorry, I said the last couple of questions, but you mentioned the movie, and I'm curious. Say more about the movie that's coming up, and where do you get the money to get a superstar actor on the show? How does that work?
Well, Seth Green So we made a short film in May, and we put it out. And he saw the short film and tweeted about it, and then we started talking, and we had still have quite a lot of calls about all of the stuff. But we made our vision pretty clear, and we had a space. He was on it where we talked about what we all wanted to do and what we're doing in the background. I can't disclose everything, but there'll be some announcements. As far as the money, there's two ways to deal with this. Either you can take a deal really early on, a development deal with the studio, which we've had offered and we've declined those, or you can kind of self-fund to a certain point before you go for like the big $20 million budget for production. So we're taking that route. We want to have. It's just a matter of control. How much creative control and input do you want to have? If you go with the really early development deal, you have very little. And if you go through the script writing and all of that stuff and the pitching to the studios for financing on production, they're buying what you've created. You don't change much from that point. So, we're going for it.
Cool. And last question, what other projects are you out there seeing where I feel like you have such a wealth of knowledge about kind of the do's and don'ts of the space? What other projects are you impressed with? Do you think are doing interesting things in the NFT space that you think is promising?
I think Azuki is probably the strongest. I think they're like the Apple. I consider them like the Apple of NFT. Like, they don't put things out that aren't gorgeous. The quality is there, and I admire what they've done a lot. I own two, and I'm sure that they're gonna go places. I'm a passive holder. I just hold them and don't do anything with them. I don't participate in the community much, but they are doing a fabulous job in my point of view.
Cool. All right, Ben, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you taking us through the story. There's so much to what you've built. Just opening this page and seeing all these different brands you've built and kind of everything that's been ongoing in your universe. It's an impressive thing. So I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Nice to be on.
All right, that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you would like to help us out, head on over to proof.xyz and click on the reviews button at the very top and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks so much. Take care.